Hi, so welcome to my dev diary for my final year games design project. And here this is a walkthrough of my 5 to 10 minute playable slice of Odin's Tears, a narrative driven player agency based story that focuses on the adventures of Norse mythology and Odin's journey to save his son from a curse. To start with, I worked very hard on the landscapes. I learned how to use the Unreal 5 landscaping tools. I also learned how to use spline points for the rivers. I also had extensive experience placing and editing static meshes to create environments such as this farm plot here. There were a lot of design choices that went into this to make sure it was as accurate as possible to what I imagine a historical Viking settlement would be like, but this is in Alfheim, which is a separate realm to Earth, or Midgard as it's known in Norse mythology, and therefore there were some allowances that could be made, but I still wanted to keep it accurate and true to my vision of how the 9 realms should have been. Populating small details like the farmland is important to me because I wanted to create a rich environment, one that feels alive and reactive to the character. This is also represented in the dialogue, which we'll see soon. I had some experience with the engine, but not much prior to this, so there was a lot of learning to be done, a lot of figuring things out. Now, a main feature of the player character is that they have 2 wolves following them, Jerry and Frecky. There were issues of their collision and them clipping into each other, which I managed to fix, but they do bounce off each other, which is something that would have to be looked at in further debugging and playtest iterations. I then went on to populate the scenery of the main town in Alfheim, which consisted of putting together walls and stockades and a gate that had a trigger box on it so the player could travel between that realm and the forest, the farm that we have just seen. But I wanted to add a bit of a twist to this area, because Yggdrasil is very important to Norse mythology and I wanted that to be represented. So many of the features across both level maps that I created feature very large roots. Now, these roots were also made with spline points that I was able to manipulate to get the shapes I desired, adding more to get curvatures and putting points upwards to understand how they worked and how the textures manipulated based on the positions of each spline point. Now, Alfheim being a major town, it was meant to be fortified and safe for the civilians. Not a particularly big town, but one that is prosperous nonetheless, mainly farmers and merchants. And here I'm manipulating the spline points to surround this main hall at the top of this cliff here. So the player has some sort of direction of where they should head due to the route and the fact that the hall is on a higher level than everyone else to create a kind of waypoint system without directly guiding the player or directly telling the player where to go. This still gives the feeling of explorative agency, while also making sure the player goes in the correct direction for the main storyline. Now these routes do surround the edges of the town, which means players can't just fall off the edge of the world. So not only were they used for a decorative and narrative purpose, but also for a structural purpose to stop the player falling into the void, essentially. Which more gates and fences and then surrounded it to further ensure that in the gaps the player can't fall into the void. My aim for this project was to create a realistic, immersive environment that I felt best represented Norse mythology and my own passions for open world, grassy, foresty exteriors. Now, here we are in the final build mode. You can see the player has animations, the walls follow, and there are tree roots around. Landscaping and splines are present and very important. Through this section of forest here, I have created a little rocky outpost with some free roaming wolves as well as their kills and bones on the ground. If you come back over to this farm and enter the door, you can speak to this farmer, get some dialogue options. There are several options, each with different outcomes, and each one will result in you collecting a tier. Now I am aware that when the player interacts with someone they also jump. That is something that would have to be looked at debugging and is likely an issue with the interact mappings interfering with keyboard inputs while using the controller. Now inside the town it has been populated with many houses to represent the people that live here are quite wealthy, being the main town. Mostly farmers with their butcher's trade. Of course lots of firewood available because of the surplus amount of trees. There are so many trees because being in close proximity to the roots of Yggdrasil, trees tend to spawn. Here we can see a fish merchant stand, a hut with a bonfire and a baker's stand. Following the path down, there are some more merchants near the gate, including this hunter with bones and skins, and a vegetable merchant. Across this bridge and down by the river, which is also made using spline points, there are some more simple houses along this path. And then you reach the blacksmiths. In here there is a forge, some ore and a furnace. And in here is where all the weapons are stored after the blacksmith has made them, in close proximity to the main hall, so there is always access to weapons if needed. Around Yggdrasil route you can find pools of fresh water, such as here, where there is water leaking from the roots surrounding the hall, which has created a waterfall, and the river. I decided to populate the bottom of the river with grass just to give that alive, rich feeling that Yggdrasil, being the tree of life, is meant to portray. Now going up this ramp to the hall, which is meant to be the main feature of the town, which players should be inclined to go towards without any written guidance. There are more trees here and water. Inside this hall is a lavish feast hall where Frey, the head of the Alfheim people, would be. And that is my dev diary for Odin's Tears, my third year final project submitted to York St John University. Thank you.